Tonight we'll hear the story of Crispy Bear. A long time ago, this little bear was alive because she listened to her father, so she was happy. But Crispy had one terrible problem. She was filled with curiosity. Yes, and one day she saw something new and died.
Just like that?
How'd you come up with the idea of their names?
A lot of those names were there before I got there.
Okay, well, we
yeah.
really just wanted sort of names that were like sounds that could sound like their characters, that kind of embodied their characters. So Grug always Grug, you just drug along, and Ugga and Eep. We just wanted something bright and cheery for Eep. And Thunk, well, Thunk is Thunk.
Like caveman sounding. We're trying to imagine.
And Sandy
what would a
makes no
caveman
sense
name themselves?
whatsoever.
She is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was really silly. What was the kind of the genesis for this idea? Who did it come from?
Actually, well, we started. I had written a couple scripts with John Cleese. One of them was at Disney, and the DreamWorks people had read this, and they invited us over to kind of look at some projects. And there was a kernel of an idea. It was a one-pager about some cavemen that we especially liked. And what gravitated towards was this theme of the fear of change. And that's something that's been consistent throughout the entire development process, is that this fear of change, and that it felt like a theme that was perfect for the metaphor of the caveman times, because the world was literally changing under his feet, but also it had that kind of relatability we felt to all ages, because if you're changing schools as a kid, it's a scary time. If you're changing jobs as an adult, it's a scary time.
Oh, yeah.
So that kind of fear of change was something that felt like it was not only, it was relatable, but it was something that we could really dig into and made sense to talk about in this caveman era.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And I actually think you said never not be afraid. That was your
That's my motto.
So were you able to help? Was that kind of a way to help you get over your own
Maybe
fears?
I think that this is what I'm learning rather recently. Perhaps it was.
It might be.
Very expensive therapy session.
The characters in the film, I found them to be very unique. As a matter of fact, when I first saw them, they were all so, when you watch these movies, it seems like somebody sat down with everybody and gone, okay, what is going to be the easiest for people to look at, and is the prettiest characters, and everybody in this seems so unique. And I'm wondering, what was that, based off of? Where did y'all come up with those character models?
I think that the biggest controlling idea, the very first one, I think, for us was to make them look like what we felt caveman would believably look like.
Right.
We didn't want to make them overly beautiful, but I guess the right way to say it would be, we didn't want to make them fragile looking. And so that's why they have these big arms, big, broad backs and things like that. Especially when you think about this opening sequence where they're out there getting their breakfast, and it's all about running and falling and throwing and climbing and surviving these impacts. We wanted them to believably live in the caveman world and look like they could survive there, even though it's tough. So it was I think one of the most exciting parts of this whole process is beginning the character design bit, and it took a long time to hone them into what we have. But I love the way they came out. If you look at just their silhouettes, Grug in particular, he is in amazing shape. His arms are so long that all he needs to do when he's standing up to put his knuckles on the ground is bend forward a couple of inches, and his hands are already on the ground.
Right.
So he's all arms.
He's like an ape, yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, his movements are based on a silverback gorilla. Eep's movements are based on a cat. Gran's movements are based on a lizard or an alligator. And the little one, Sandy, she moves around like a little puppy dog. So when she first runs out of the cave, she stops and she's actually panting and kind of shaking her. She's shaking her whole body like she's a little dog and wants to go somewhere. So, and of course, Thunk, he's just kind of a mess right now. He doesn't really have, he's the confused guy.
And sometimes she kind of barks like a dog.
Yeah, exactly. So we built those little animal characteristics into them. And one of the other things, I don't know if you really pick up on it, but Eep, one of the very first things she does in the film is she climbs.
Right.
And that's all about this. The symbolism behind that is that she's just always trying to get away. She wants to leave. She wants to get away. Grug has a lot of trouble climbing. A few times in the film he tries to climb up on something and he slides right back down. So that is all about showing people his mindset. He's having trouble. He's having trouble getting out of mental space
Coming,
that he's been in.
going into a new world. Yeah.
Yeah.
That seemed to be a huge theme in the movie as well. Is like getting rid of the familiar and opening yourself up to a new world.
Yeah.
Was that in the original script, or did you guys kind of bring part of that in?
That was brought in when we started working on it, because when it became more of a road trip, or more of a journey film, that's
Right.
when that came in. And the other version, it was new things coming into the town more. So it was in the shape of a new guy coming to town, and it was more keeping up with the guy, or popularity. And
I like the journey.
yeah, the journey, and also the thing is that the biggest fear for him, the biggest fear for change, I mean, yeah, the world's changing around him, yeah, technology, but the thing he's most concerned about is his family changing.
Right.
And when he's sitting at the bottom of that tree late in that second act, and they're all up there, they've all changed, they've all gone, and he's just down there,
Trying to come up with his good ideas.
feeling as far
Which
away,
was really funny.
feeling as far away from them as he ever has, and then that's his response, is this poor attempt at being
Right.
Very
relevant,
unattractive. It's a very unattractive response.
But you really start to care
Yeah,
for
you
him.
care for him. He's
You do.
trying.
He's getting desperate.
He's getting desperate.
And I definitely am glad that y'all went with the kind of road trip thing, because coming into the town, the beginning is the least interesting part. Once they go out into that world, good Lord, the animation in this movie is just gorgeous. It is just absolutely beautiful. It was like watching Avatar. It was really fantastic, and that's what I'm wondering. Where was that? Was a lot of these characters, all the the names for the funny dog, elephant, mouse, elephant things, and all that kind. Was that part of a big collaborative process, or was a lot of that in the script?
No, this one is pretty. It's pretty interesting because, like I said, but in live action film, you'll have a script. It gets screenlit. It gets sent out. And
Right.
They bring it to a set wherever it is in the world that there's tax breaks that year.
Right.
And then
Hey, we're going to Louisiana, guys.
Exactly. We're going to Prague. We're going wherever, and you shoot the movie there. And when you get there, you give everybody the script, and then they bring that to life. But in animation, those artists are working alongside as we're finding the story, so they're bringing us inspiration. So they'd be like, look at this great place we've created. We're like, oh no, let's get over there. How do we get our characters into that world? Or that's an interesting creature. We have a problem. Maybe they can help us with,
Right.
So it's a more of a back and forth than in any other filmmaking, I think. So it is very collaborative.
Yeah, and I think that's just as much work as just coming up with a generalized screenplay. It's like when I talk to people about Avatar or
Right.
anything else, they're like, oh, well, it's like Dances with Wolves with blue
Right.
people. And I'm like, yeah, but look at all the character
Right,
models and
right.
all the individual, like you said, you ended up using 29 out of 39 or 40 different
right.
things that you created.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of thought process, and it shows on the screen. And I think that there's a big difference between that and Dances with Wolves. I'm actually, it's really an honor to have an opportunity to meet you, Chris, because if I remember correctly, you were part of The Lion King and Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and basically all the movies that shaped my life.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
I memorized, I saw Aladdin so many times, I know every single word. At least I used to. I drew my parents insane. And I absolutely loved How to Train Your Dragon. So I'm kind of interested, do you have any good old stories from, making some of those wonderful Disney classics?
Golly, there's a lot of good stories. Gosh, let's see. I was just talking about Beauty and the Beast. I have two very quick stories that are musically important, which both played into this movie. The first was on Beauty and the Beast. Howard Ashman was not feeling well at the point at which he was starting to work on Beauty and the Beast. So we actually traveled out to Fishkill, New York, and spent a few days at the Residence Inn, and he would come in every day. And we were starting to just block the songs out for the movie. And one of the questions I asked after, and he was just like, he's looking for very simple handles to these songs. And one of the things he said was, well, Part of Your World could have been, in my mind, was originally titled I Want Feet. That's just how simple it was. Part of Your World, she's just talking about how her life has changed if she gets feet. So he was looking for the handle for the intro song to Belle. And after a day of all of us talking about what is the exact song going to be about, I said, I have a silly question. How do you know where to put the songs? And he said, oh, that's easy. You put them at the story turns. And that was just such a light bulb went off. It just was so simple and clear. And if you look at where he puts his songs in his movies, that's exactly where they're falling. You think about like the song where Ariel goes to see the Sea Witch,
Right.
and the Sea Witch sings that song. Ariel comes into that song with fins, and she leaves with feet. So that the story turned. The story will never change. Be
So the
same.
music it serves as more than just a song. It serves as a way to move the plot along.
Yeah, and you have to be really good at what you do to be able to write that song.
Right.
So for him, it may be easy, but I'm thinking it's not so easy for the rest of us. But the really important thing that affected this movie was back in Lilo and Stitch. There was a moment in Lilo and Stitch where Stitch went from bad to good. And Alan came in and he looked at the movie, and he looked at the storyboards for the movie, and then he started looking at the animation, and he said, I'm not seeing that moment on screen when he turned from bad to good. And we shrugged and admitted that we hadn't really put it on screen. We didn't know how to write that scene.
Right.
And it actually happened off screen. And he said, put it on screen and I'll write it. And that was something that never even occurred to me, that he could do the turn in music without any words at all. And that's exactly what happens. There's a moment where Stitch is sitting there and the music changes, and you know that he's not going to be bad anymore. He's changed his mind.
So lyrically, or with the changing of the symphony, or...
Yeah. So ever since then, we've built little houses for music in our films. In How to Train Your Dragon, it's that moment where Hiccup and the dragon get together for the first time in the cove, and they're working out their relationship. If that was all dialogue, I think it would be a big drag to watch that scene. But because there's no dialogue, you're very into that moment. And then in this film, there's a lot of different moments we built. One of the moments I like to talk about is the moment where the Croods see the night sky for the very first time. And we knew from the very beginning that this is going to be a moment without dialogue. It's just going to be one of those hopefully transcendent moments. It's something that's quite beyond your ability to write.
Right.
What would you have them say? So they go up to the top of the tree and they see the stars for the first time. And that all goes back to lessons that we've learned about music along the way in our careers.
I agree. And image. It's like, when do you stay on something for, just this amount of time? It's like when you see these movies, and there are a lot of great directors where they just seem like they're throwing the camera in the corner of a room and they just leave it sitting there, and somebody's staring off into nowhere for a long period of time, and you're like, okay, I get what's going on, but why a minute and a half of him staring off into nowhere? But you see a movie like this where they do that, or like a movie like The Gray, where the guy finally comes to the understanding that he's going to die, and he just looks off into the distance, and the camera stays on it with that slight score for a good 45 seconds, and you're like, see, this is perfect. This is where we need to stay there, where we need to feel this. And no, I absolutely get, yeah, that's great. Who are some filmmakers, live action, animation, anybody, that like yourselves admire and, follow their work closely?
I think a lot about Carroll Ballard and his films, Never Cry Wolf and Fly Away Home. Again, I think just because of the visual component. I was watching a show about how he makes his films, and he was saying that he actually carries a camera with him on set, and he actually has to see things through the camera before he decides which way he's going to go with things sometimes. Right. I thought that was absolutely fascinating.
I can agree with that. Actually, I do that in life.
Chris and I both are a fan. When we started our live action, just that kind of thing. We're big fans of Ivan Reitman comedies of the old days.
Oh,
Our
yeah.
biggest one were
Yeah.
Meatballs and Caddyshack, everything we get our hands on, in that kind of realm we just love. So I think that was something we learned, just that balance of like comedy, but then heart. That
Absolutely.
was the fun of those movies.
Oh, yeah, like
Ghostbusters
is one of my
favorites. Of
it's
doing
impossible.
that, of not having a big epic story, but at the middle, it's just really about three guys starting a business.
Exactly,
It's three
and the
buddies.
characters work so well.
Yeah, it just happens to be that they're opening up a ghostbusting business, which is really great.
Right.
But it's still a very small story set against a big backdrop.
Oh, absolutely. It's like I'm talking with my father all the time, and he's like, well, I don't know if original ideas, if everything has really been done or hasn't been done, but no matter how many original ideas have been done, if you can create characters that people care about, then they're always going to feel original, and they're always going to feel new. So I'm glad that y'all are creating those characters. It was absolutely a wonder to get to meet you.
Thank you so much.
DreamWorks The Croods.